Okay, so welcome back to Chat and Chew. So today's session is called Lines That Liberate Building Confidence Through Boundaries. And today's session is based on Terri Cole's book, Boundary Boss. So I think boundaries sometimes get a bad rep. So I think sometimes people see them as really isolating, can kind of limit collaboration. But I've kind of learned that sometimes they can be really helpful. So I know for me personally, I've struggled with setting boundaries a lot. I still struggle with setting boundaries sometimes. But the goal of this session is kind of to highlight how boundaries can kind of free you up to show up as yourself authentically. So like I said, this session is based off of Terri Cole's book, Boundary Boss. So Terri Cole is a psychotherapist. She wrote the book, Boundary Boss. So she's worked with parents, CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, celebrities. If you've ever had about messy boundaries, she's probably seen it. She's written about it. She's studied it. So we're going to borrow some of her ideas today in talking about boundaries, but just looking at it in a higher education kind of chat and chew twist. So boundaries are the guidelines we set to protect our time, energy, and values. So they're not necessarily about being mean or being selfish, but they're about being really clear about what you want and what you don't want. So anytime that you've kind of said yes to something where you felt like you really should say no and like every part of you is saying no, this is where a boundary could be really, really helpful. So boundaries aren't something that are kind of extra. They're actually pretty essential to how we live our lives, because without boundaries, we end up feeling pretty overextended, burned out, and honestly, just plain grumpy. So with them, we create healthier relationships and just add more clarity in our lives. So when we don't set those boundaries, again, we just kind of end up feeling burnt out, resentment towards people, and just general confusion since people don't actually know what we want. So on the flip side, when we do set those boundaries, people actually tend to trust us more just because they know what to expect from us. They aren't left questioning how they should interact with us. They know how to interact with us because we told them. So I want to spend some time talking about this lovely word here, nice. For me, I think I let this word govern my life for a really long time. I wanted to be nice. I wanted to be seen as a kind person. And while it's really great to be nice, sometimes it doesn't help us really be truthful. So if there's something I want kind of all of us to take away from this session today, it's this idea that being fake nice isn't actually being kind. When we're nice just because we want to be nice, sometimes we would say things at the expense of the truth or what we actually want to say. So again, just being fake nice, it provides others with bad intel. So we might say, oh yeah, I really loved how you did that, even if we didn't really like how they did that because we were too afraid to address it. So one of my favorite lines from Terri Cole is this idea that healthy boundaries are generous and efficient. So they don't really drain relationships, but they add to them because again, people know how you want to be interacted with because we are clear in telling them that. So that's actually being kind is being clear. So most of us didn't wake up knowing just how to do boundaries. So we picked up what Terri calls a boundary blueprint. So our boundary blueprint are based on all of our experiences that we had in the past. So there are family, any cultural influences we have, and any past experiences that we have. So maybe you grew up in a household where saying no was illegal, so you just say yes to everything immediately and you overgive. Or maybe you learned that the only way to stay safe was to build up these really high walls so you don't let anyone in. Or maybe you do both. Either way, our experiences are part of this boundary blueprint and they impact the decisions we make. So I know for me personally, when I was younger, my mom had this rule that you had to clean the whole house and you couldn't rest until everything was clean, which is so great. I love having a clean house. However, sometimes now I'll keep cleaning even though I want to sit down and like rest. And that's just because I'm operating off of an old blueprint, right? I have a choice to do differently, but I'm still stuck with the things that I was taught. So just think about that. Any situation where you routinely say yes to something or where you feel uncomfortable after you make a decision, that's kind of an area to look at and think about, why am I consistently making this decision, even though I don't feel good about the decision that I make? So in talking about boundaries, I think it's really important to talk about codependency, which I think is a word that kind of got thrown around a lot in the last couple of years. But just want to operate off of this definition of it. It's very simple, just thinking about when you feel responsible for other people's feelings or actions. So when our boundaries are weak or when they're shaped by certain experiences, sometimes we might lean into codependent behaviors. So it can look like overgiving or you're saying yes again when you want to say no. It looks like overfunctioning or doing tasks that other people can do for themselves and doing the work for them. Or it can look like jumping in for advice when nobody asked for your advice, but you felt the need to give your advice. Or perfectionism. Sometimes I think we might get in our heads that if we do everything perfect, then everyone will be happy. So we'll just try to hit everything perfectly, which unfortunately, that is just not how it works. Sometimes we can do things perfectly and people aren't happy with that. So often codependency comes from a good place. We want to help. We want to give to other people. But it can really be exhausting if we're spending all of our energy giving to other people. So it can feel like no one sees the real us because we're so busy anticipating what other people want and need. So in the workplace, codependency might look like the person who stays longer hours than they need to get things done, or the person who volunteers for everything because they feel like they should be at everything, or a manager who takes on all the emotional load of their team without letting people do their part. So healthy boundaries can kind of help us avoid these codependent behaviors by clarifying what's ours to handle, what's ours to deal with, and what's someone else's to deal with. So for this, when we struggle with these boundaries, Terri Cole offers us 3 tools for clarity. So we have the 3 Qs and the 3 Rs, and these are kind of helpful to help us recognize when we are kind of in that previous space in our heads. So the 3 Qs help us identify when we're operating off an old blueprint. So we have, what does this remind me of? Where have I felt this before? How is this dynamic familiar to me? So just kind of identifying how it's similar to something in the past. The 3 Rs are to help us respond differently. So recognize when we're having that reaction, release any transference, so just let it go from the past, and then respond with mindfulness. So this is that opportunity to kind of pause that automatic reaction. And I want to say that and recognize that that's probably one of the hardest things to ever do, is to pause our automatic reactions, because it's not something we're thinking about. But this is kind of that moment to pause and do that thinking of, am I doing this because I want to do this, or am I doing this because I think I should do this? So we have internal boundaries where I want to start. So this is the boundaries you have with yourself. This was really interesting for me because when I thought about boundaries, I just thought about it as something you set for other people. But I think it's really important to think about internal boundaries. So Terri Cole suggests that good boundaries start with how you treat yourself. So when we have internal boundaries, we're thinking about, do we keep that promise that we make to ourselves, right? Do you go to the gym at 6 a.m. because you said you would? I do not go to the gym at 6 a.m., but I also don't think I'd ever say I would. Do you manage your time in ways that you reflect your goals? So are you carving out that time to do the thing you want to do in your day? When we fail to follow through on these internal boundaries or holding ourselves to these boundaries, we're essentially abandoning ourselves and the things that we want to do. So it's kind of letting go of the things that we want and not holding ourselves accountable to doing those things. So the more accustomed we get to abandoning ourselves and the things we want to do, the more likely we are to have bad boundaries, because we're already used to letting go of what we want to do. In talking about boundaries, there's kind of 3 ways that they can be. They can get rigid, which just means no one gets in. They're very strict and firm. Porous means that everyone gets in, so very loose boundaries. And healthy boundaries are somewhere in the middle. So they're clear about what works while leaving room for collaboration. So again, something that stood out to me during this is, I think when I first started thinking about boundaries, I thought about them as this unwavering thing that you had to have and not have any sway in that. But Terri Cole has a different perspective. So in this quote, she says, contrary to popular belief, super inflexible boundaries are not healthy, since they are driven by a fear of vulnerability and can inhibit open, healthy relationships and experiences. So I really appreciate this quote because I think it makes 2 really good points. One, that boundaries should and can be flexible, and two, that healthy relationships require a level of vulnerability. If you're not naturally in tune with your emotions, this might be the point where you're like, ew, I don't want to share my feelings. But for Terri Cole, this vulnerability is central to living a fulfilling life. She argues that it's actually amazing to be seen and heard, but also does acknowledge that it takes a lot of courage to do that, especially when not every space is welcoming of that. So in many ways, setting boundaries helps us to do exactly that, setting ourselves up to be authentically known. So by clearly stating what we want and how we want to be treated, we're giving others a chance to see the real us and inviting healthier, more honest connection. So when starting to set boundaries, 3 things to think about are your preferences, desires, and deal breakers. So your preferences are the little things that you would like to have but can live without. So you might prefer to meet in the morning and then in the afternoon. It's very simple, not high stakes. Desires are a little bit deeper. There are wants to have. So like, I want to have a workload that is manageable. That would be really nice. Does it happen all the time? No, but again, it's not the end of the world if I have to work a little bit more. Your deal breakers are your absolute no, so the lines you won't cross. So like, I won't tolerate being spoken to disrespectfully. That is just absolute no, I won't do that. The thing is, in life, not everyone takes a lot of time to think through these. I know that I can get really caught up in routine, right? If I'm coming home from work, I'm cleaning, I am cooking, I am having to deal with laundry because I feel like I always have laundry. I'm not thinking about what I want to do or what that might look like. So in thinking about these, it can be really helpful to do the work ahead of time of setting those boundaries. Because when you take a minute to think about what do I want, what do I need, what would be nice to have, your boundaries kind of write themselves because you're already clear on what do I want, how would I like to be treated. Another bonus is that you learn that not everything's a deal breaker. So you learn what are the things that you can compromise on versus the things that you would prefer not to compromise on. So one of my favorite tools from Boundary Boss is this idea of a proactive boundary plan. So the goal is to, instead of react in the moment, doing a little bit of work ahead of time to set that boundary. So if you know a conversation is coming, you don't have to wing it. So you're thinking about clarifying your boundary. So getting really clear to yourself on what is the limit I want to set. So the clearer you are with yourself, the clearer you'll be with other people. Step number 2 is to check those triggers. So it's check in with yourself. It's a 3 Qs. Think about, am I operating off of an old blueprint or am I responding to this in the moment? Am I present? So if your old experiences are fueling your reaction, noticing that ahead of time makes the conversation a lot easier because you know what you're bringing with you to that conversation. Step 3 is visualize the outcome. So this isn't like visualizing the perfect conversation, but it's thinking about hearing yourself say your boundary and imagining the other person hearing you. So that mental rehearsal makes it a lot easier when you're in that conversation to say what you want to say to that person. Step 4 is using direct language. And again, directness doesn't mean we're being rude. It just means we're being very clear about what we want. So again, not harsh, we're just being clear. And step 5 is reinforcing with gratitude. So I think this is a part that we might miss sometimes, but it's really valuable when someone does respect your boundary, and reinforcing that with just a simple thank you can go a really long way. So the beauty of a proactive boundary plan is that it shifts you from reactive to intentional. So instead of spiraling when a boundary gets crossed, we can walk in kind of with a little bit more of a clear head and an idea of how we would like to respond. And like any skill, it's something that just needs to be practiced. It gets easier the more that you do it. So just a couple of real world examples on how this might come up in the workplace. The first one is triangulation. So that's that time where someone might come to you and say, hey, I'm having an issue with Stephen. Can you talk to Stephen for me? And, me talking to Andy, he might say, that sounds like something you need to talk to Stephen about. So redirect it. Don't engage in it. Don't get yourself in the middle, but redirect them. You can go back and talk to that person. Your auto advice giver, that is the person that, again, will just give you that advice and jump in because they know how to fix your life. If you know that that person has a tendency to do that, just set it up ahead of time. Hey, I just want to share this with you. I don't need your advice, but I appreciate you maybe for wanting to help me. Then there's the nosy questions. The person that wants to know what you got going on in your life. What are you doing tomorrow? What you doing the day after that? This person, as well-intentioned as they might be, we might not want to share. So you can just say, hey, I'm okay. I really don't want to talk about that, but I appreciate you asking. So again, you don't really have to engage. It's not that you're being rude. You're just saying, I don't want to do that. Covert judgment. So this is the person that's just being honest. They just wanted to let you know just because they, FYI, just wanted to let you know. You can tell them, hey, just that sounds like unsolicited feedback, and I really don't need that feedback. Thank you, though. Just name it. Body language can be helpful in setting boundaries, but I think it's important to acknowledge that if you rely off of using your body language to set boundaries, it's not being super clear, right? So Terri Cole gave an example of you have a coworker that likes to chat with you a lot, and they'll come by your desk and they'll just chat and they'll chat and they'll chat, which is so great if you like to chat, but if you want to get something done, it's not so great. So she suggests kind of like staying on your laptop, just like your subtle, yeah, just kind of giving that slight cue to that other person that you don't really want to engage in that conversation. But again, it's just not super clear. So if they don't get the hint, you should probably just tell them, hey, I'm okay. I don't want to talk about this right now. Thank you, though. And then the last one is offensive comments. So if you hear someone say something that does offend you, you can just name that and say, hey, that comment makes me uncomfortable. If you could not say that, that'd be great. Thank you. Just address it really directly. Of course, not all of this is going to work out perfectly. Not everyone's going to respect your boundary, but if you know what you want, you can state that and name that for yourself. What's up, Andy?
So when is a good time to practice these or try these? Because sometimes you can get in a situation where, say, the body language piece, when someone walks in your office and you're busy, it could be a crucial time for you. So your mindset is to get that task done, and it may be a bit stressful. Mm-hmm. If you feel a bit, I know if I feel a bit angst, I don't say, hey, I can't talk to you right now, because it's going to come out wrong. Mm-hmm. So when do you suggest is a good time to practice?
I think honestly, anytime, right? Because if you know that's something that you have, that you're sensitive about, right? You know, if I'm working on something, I know I don't like to be distracted or pulled off of it. That is something you can already think about in your head. Okay, if they come to my office while I'm working on this, what can I say, right? It's kind of like that proactive boundary plan of thinking about, these are common situations that come up for me. How would I like to respond to these situations?
So when I think about being in a workplace, non-cubicle environments with doors, mm-hmm. It is known that if your door's open, you're available. Yeah. Okay. So it's hard for you to say when someone comes up, hey, I'm working on something, because I'm just like, why your door open? Because you invite me in. Doors closed mean I don't want you to come in. So I would see it as someone trying to be rude, because I'm just like, you could have just closed your door, right? And then also, if I don't understand that your door closed means you're busy, you could have put a sign up there that says, working on a task or whatever you want to come back within 15 minutes, text me or whatever. So if I walk in someone's office and they're working on something in this environment here, I feel like you're just being rude.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good point too. Like when you do have a door, it's a really good point to just close your door if you don't want to be distracted.
Or don't come to work, right? You can just work from home that day, right?
That's if you have that flexibility too.
Right. And so that's how I deem it. So because I feel like now cubicles is a little different. Yes, absolutely. Because cubicles, you don't have anything. People can just walk up and you use that. But I feel like in office environments with doors, you just don't want to be bothered today.
Yeah, and that's clear to just close your. That's a really good point. Actually, if you have a door, you can just close your door.
I'm definitely gonna do the sign. Sometimes I close the door, and people slowly open it.
Like, hey, you guys
look like yeah, right.
Yeah.
So
and that's because you're visual, right?
Yeah,
you know. So I think just a nice sign, currently working on a project.
Yeah.
Text me at this number or send me an email.
Yeah.
Or leave a sticky note
Yeah.
and I get back, something of that nature.
Yeah.
Cause it just assume, because doors open mean you come in, like even at my house at home.
Yeah.
My kids know if my door is open, you can free flow in here, come in, but if that door closed,
Yeah. Yeah.
you better knock.
It's interesting about this work from home, because when I work from home, I get so much done thought process wise, and I get to see it on paper. So when I get here, I work on it for like 5 minutes because I framed it at home and done the research at home. But then sometimes I feel like I'm missing out because, I want to be present just in case somebody stops by, get some ideas. So I've been kind of, that's been kind of hard for me, work from home and be present. So
Yeah,
I'm glad you mentioned that.
physically. So when I come here, this is what I do.
Mhm.
This here, I'm talking, fellowship, going to stuff, meeting with people. People can come in. I'm not working on anything important here.
Gotcha.
Cause you're gonna get interrupted 20 times. And then you're gonna turn in subpar work because you got
Yeah.
interrupted and it's gonna have mistakes on it,
Absolutely.
right? So if it's something that I have to work on that require my mental space, it's gonna have to be a Starbucks at home or
Okay.
somewhere other than Chat State, because this is a free flowing environment where people just walk and talk and fellowship.
I like the sign idea because I think sometimes with the door, like, I know in our office, like, there may be days where it's like, I'm not really available to take on anything else, but, I'm popping out to ask Becca something or Naomi, or it's almost like, it's like if you could put a status that's like, certain people are on the list, some people are not. Like, I don't want to close my door today because I want certain, to be able to pop in and out, but also like, I'm here and I'm semi-available, but not open to just take on anything. But a sign could do that with that, because I get that too. It's like if your door's open and you're just like, no, I'm not good. It does send that message. And so, let's.
Care how you put it, you can put it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I don't care how much smiling you do.
That's what's up. Okay.
Okay.
I think, sign, closed door, if you have that option. So just to wrap, kind of just recapping, so boundaries are essential. Again, they're just not about shutting people out, but they're about showing up and building that confidence and just that clarity. They can come in many forms. So you have your internal, personal, and professional boundaries that all matter. You have your rigid, porous, and then that sweet spot of the flexible and healthy boundaries. We have our codependency and repeating boundary patterns can blur our boundaries. So those are things to just do that mental work. Is that something that you lean into? Is it not? And using those 3 R's to recognize if you do lean into those things. So again, just thinking about the fact that boundaries don't isolate us, but they can actually really liberate us if we use them. So, I'll go to questions and then I'm gonna stop our recording.
Under more, the 3 dots.